The Glock Gen 5 Model 20 in 10mm. Let's check it out. Glock introduced the Model 20 in 1991. It was the first double-stack 10mm pistol on the market, and it was 9 years after they introduced the Glock 17. It was in Gen 3. It has a very thick grip. To house that 10mm, and even though 10mm is only 1mm larger than 9, there's definitely a lot of differences. They came out with a short frame, which reduced the area from the back strap to the trigger, and it did make a difference. Then they came out with a Gen 4, which has interchangeable back straps. There was a lot of changes made to it, but it still felt thick in my hand. I've been looking forward to seeing the Gen 5. And one of the things with removing of the finger grooves and that short frame feel to it, this is, to me, the most ergonomic of the bunch. If you have larger hands, you may still like the original. But for most people, and I know a lot of guys with large hands that still think the Glock 20 is a thick gun. This gives you a lot of advantages. Plus, Gen 5 has a lot of upgrades internally. So this makes it even more of an efficient, better firearm. And plus, 10mm is just cool. Now, I got in touch with Glock and I requested the Model 20 Gen 5 for this review. I've been waiting on the Gen 5 for a good while. We did a review on the Model 21, which is in 45 ACP, a few months ago. But 10mm puts you in the beast mode. And yes, I am purchasing this gun. It will be on my side, especially when I'm in the great outdoors. The Glock Model 20, this is Gen 5. It is a 10mm handgun. It holds 15+1. It's a polymer striker fire pistol, just like all the other Glocks. You know, they're pretty much a very simple handgun, which really lends to great reliability. And really, for me, I can change out every part on this handgun as just an armorer. And it's one of the appeals of the Glock. To me, it's one of the best handguns to have as far as reliability, as far as just what I call the AK-47 of the handgun world. But one of the big things about the Glock Model 20, it was introduced in 1991. The original Glock Gen 1 Model 17 was introduced in 1982. So it was 9 years after Glock started producing handguns. One thing you'll notice is there's no finger grooves on the Gen 1, or the Gen 2 for that matter. There is a 2-pin system. So you have your trigger pin and you have your extractor housing pin. But here we've gone to just the straight front fingerless front strap, and we've gone back to 2 pins. So here we've got kind of going back, but honestly there are so many changes with the Gen 5, especially internally, but also on the external. So while a lot of people say that they're not really doing any changes, there have been a ton of changes to these handguns. Now let's go ahead and get rid of the ammo, and we're going to check to make sure that the gun is unloaded. So we're going to drop our 15+1 magazine. You'll notice the steel, you see where the witness holes are. This is lined, so it just helps it from swelling or from collapsing. Some of the original Gen 3 mags, I have some in 10mm, and they had some problems, and so they've gone to this steel lining. It has the orange follower, which denotes Gen 5, and then also the base plate has been changed. And then we'll check the chamber, and the gun's empty. But there are some pros and cons when it comes to 10mm versus 9mm versus 40 caliber. Honestly, 10mm is very similar in ballistics to a .357 Magnum, but you're getting 15 rounds instead of 5, 6, 7 rounds. It's one of the things about when Glock introduced the 10 millimeter is that it outpaced all the other guns on the market because we had the Bren 10, we had the Colt Delta Elite, we had some others, and they were limited with the mag capacity. And so we've got a duty style handgun, definitely a little bit larger than your 9 millimeter, but very shootable, very easy to carry. And then so the FBI went with the Model 20 and 10 millimeter. It was too much. The second and third follow-up shots were difficult to stay on target. You could do a lot better with actually 40 caliber, but then they went on back to 9 millimeter. One of the things about 40 caliber is that it is really just a neck down 10 millimeter. And so you can actually fire 40 caliber out of the Glock Model 20 because it headspaces on the extractor. And so, we've done a ton of that. In fact, some competitive shooters even use 40 caliber because it's a lot less recoil. But they shortened the case down. Honestly, most of your 10 millimeter factory is just a hopped up 40 caliber, but it was originally designed for more like your Underwood rounds or Buffalo Bore. This gun can take a lot of abuse, and especially with the Glock, it's just built really well. But then we have the 9 millimeter, and we're going to talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages, especially of the 10 versus the 9 millimeter. And there are both advantages and disadvantages. One of the big things about the Model 20 is that it is thick and it's a handful. Now, I highly anticipated the Model 20 for one big reason, just the removal of the finger grooves. And here we have the Gen 4, and of course you have your finger grooves, the Gen 3, which is now offered on Glock as just the SF model. And the SF means short frame. It's the distance between here at the back strap and the trigger. And they reduced it down to be able just to give you a little more of a grip on here and not to be so thick. The original Gen 3s were thick. In fact, I sold mine. I mean, it was just too much. Even this grip is pretty full in your hand. Now, if you have larger hands, you may like it better. But for me, it just always felt just a little bit blocky. In fact, if you'll hold one of these and then go to the 9 millimeter, you'll think that the 9 millimeter is really super slim. But here, with the removal of the finger grooves, it just makes it, to me, much more ergonomic. Even though these finger grooves don't really get in the way. They kind of naturally fit my hand. But it does add to a little bit to the grip. And guys, I'm just telling you, when I put this in my hand, it's just a world of difference. And then we have this flare at the bottom of the mag well, which is absent on your Gen 4. But this just gives you a little bit more nestling right here in your hand. I mean, this is a full-size gun. Also, with the front cocking serrations, which are absent on the Gen 4, and then we have ambidextrous slide stop here. You have your marksman barrel, which is an improved accuracy on the barrel. We have an improved trigger that Glock has introduced. This is not the enhanced trigger, but this is an enhancement over the Gen 4. And there are a number of internal changes that have also been made. For those guys with big hands, all is not lost. They do have a couple of back straps that do give you a little bit of a beaver tail on the back. To me, it adds a little bit more length to the grip, and so I just prefer this for my hand size. The texturing is very similar. To me, the Gen 5 has a little more aggressive pyramids, which give you a very solid grip. And this is also an MOS version, which is for a red dot. You even get the plates and everything for whatever red dot you're looking for, or you can leave it just like it is. Now, this particular one has the Glock night sights, and you can order the night sights directly from Glock, and they're not the plastic gold post type sights that we see here on this Gen 4. Which a lot of people do not like, and they are prone to break if you're not careful. So why have the AK-47 of the handgun world and have plastic sights? Well, that's a choice, and I have a number of them. I got the Gen 4 like that, and they do fine. But if it's really for my go-to guns, I change out the sights or I get them with the Glock factory sights. One thing about the Gen 4 and the Gen 5 is that you can switch the magazine release to the other side. And the magazines are actually cut for that. You'll notice the two cuts. In some of the older models, just like this Gen 1, but all the way through Gen 3, it had a very small magazine release, and here you can see the larger area. So these were not able to be switched to the other side, even though this magazine has both cuts. Has the DLC coating, which went away from the Tenifer, but that was back during the Gen 3. There were some health issues with the processing of the Tenifer, but it was a very strong finish. But with the NDLC coating, it's definitely very corrosion resistant, and it's a black nitride type finish. But guys, you know, it's a large handgun. Now here we have a Glock Model 17 MOS version, and you can see the slide is considerably more narrow with the Model 17. And that is because for 10mm you need a little bit of a beefier slide. You will notice that the ends have been beveled on both, and then of course you have your red dot ready. One thing as well is that the grips, same, but you can look, they are considerably different in width. And so it's one of the things about a Glock. If you picked up just a standard Glock 9mm, some people even say that this feels like a block. But you take the Model 20 and it's definitely a hand filler. But it's nice when you have that higher recoil or felt recoil. It definitely shoots with more recoil than your standard 9mm. But it gives you more ballistic advantages. One of the things about me is when I go hunting, this is on my hip. If I'm going up into the mountains hiking, this is on my hip because I would much rather face a large predator with 10mm than 9mm. Now there's also the Glock Model 29, which is their compact version of their 10mm. One thing I do want to mention is all the guns we're showing have been safety checked, and we're going to be showing a lot, so we're going to use that as the statement. But this holds 10+1. It's again very thick like the other. It's same width on the grip, it's just shorter. I really like to have a finger extension piece right here, and you can get them with extra rounds if you want, but I just like that lip. It just allows this to feel my hand, and it just grabs that pinky. And when shooting 10mm, I really appreciate that because again, 10mm, it has some kick to it. On top of that, you have a larger slide, and that slide mass is coming back, and so that gives you kind of the double effect. Is it manageable? Yes, it is manageable. I love to shoot 10mm, but you need to train with it and get used to the recoil and learn how to master it. But 10mm really compares more to 357 Magnum. Here we have a Kimber K6S, 4-inch barrel. This is a great shooting gun. You can get some really hot loads for it. And then you can shoot 38s. So, you know, it gives you some different type advantages, but the biggest disadvantage is you have 6 rounds in a revolver, you have 15 rounds, and you can carry a spare magazine compared to carrying a spare speed loader, which takes more skill and more time to load. And so that's one of the reasons why, again, that the 10mm really took center stage when it came to more Magnum type calibers. And at this time, the Model 20 is the only Gen 5 10mm they're making. Now, why would you want a 10mm over a 9mm? 9mm has softer recoil. 9mm carries 17+1 in their full size, while you have a 15+1 in your Model 20. Again, it's thinner, it's lighter, slides a lot thinner. You know, those are really most of the big differences. You still have 15+1, which is a great mag capacity, but you're getting a little bit of advantage with the 9. Recoil is definitely a big difference between the two. The heavier bullet, the more powder. Now 10mm, 9mm, I mean there's 1mm difference. What's the big deal? Well, for one thing, it has quite a bit more capacity for powder. The 10mm will hold 24.1 grains of powder, while the 9mm will only hold 13.3 grains of powder. You have a 37,000 psi Magnum pressure on your 10mm, while on the 9mm you have 35,500. And that may not seem like a lot, but you have almost double the muzzle energy with a 10mm as you do with your 9mm. You're going to have a considerable amount of more recoil. The 10mm goes from 155 grain to 200 grain, while the 9mm goes down to 80 grain and goes all the way up to 147 grain. So you have a lot of bullet choices with both, but the 9mm is definitely going to be more plentiful because it is the most popular self-defense caliber in the world. So this gives you a lot of advantages with availability, with price, but again, you've got the power of a 10mm. But one big advantage with the 10mm, and one that really speaks volumes, is that if you're going to face large predators or game, 10mm is definitely a big advantage. Now the barrel is 4.61 inches in length, and it is their Marksman barrel. It's still polygonal grooved, but it's enhanced to be able to just be more accurate. Okay, let's check the trigger pull action. You've got your blade safety right here. That keeps it from inadvertently firing it unless you have a full pad on the trigger. We've got some take up right here. A little bit of stacking and not a bad break. One of the things about Gen 5 is they have improved the triggers. Now they have their new enhanced triggers that actually are really good, but they don't make it for the Model 20. Take up right there. Better than a lot of the older gens, but still a Glock trigger. All right, we're going to check the trigger pull weight. Just about 5.5 pounds. Weight on the Glock Model 20 Gen 5, 28.6 ounces. Weight on the Model 17, this is a Gen 3, 25.77 ounces. It's about a 3-ounce difference. Big thank you to Fiocchi for sponsoring our ammo, all made in the USA. One of the biggest suppliers of ammunition in the country. And also Lula loaders. These things are so versatile. They really work well with these 10mm rounds. And Glock knows how to do it with 3 mags. I love it. All right, the Glock 20, 10mm power. And guys, when this first came out, it had a huge grip. And then they came out with a slim frame, which slimmed it down. I mean, 10mm long, and you know, for that capacity, you need a thicker grip. So I've really been kind of off and on about the Glock 20. But when they came out with the Gen 5, I was really excited, been waiting on it. Because it takes those finger grooves away, and it just makes it a more ergonomic handgun. And then with the 10mm, you're going to need that just for the Glock 20. But standard Glock mags, front and rear cocking serrations. This is the MOS version. You know, but you still know that it has that 10mm power. But yet it's contained. I'll tell you, when I go out hunting, especially, or I'm taking a trip out into the wilderness, 10mm on my side, because it's just got a lot more power behind it. And so I really feel confident with 10, but even for self-defense, home defense, I mean, it's just an excellent firearm. And now that they've got that grip down and just the other advances with the Gen 5, it's just better all the way around. "15 rounds, that'll give you a lot of firepower." For disassembly, we're going to drop our magazine, check the chamber. The gun is empty. Go ahead and pull the trigger, pull back about 1/8 of an inch, and pull down on these 2 takedown tabs on either side of the frame. Now sometimes it'll get caught up. You just need to make sure that striker is released. And then we're going to pull out our recoil spring and guide rod. It does have the dual captive guide rod system. That does help with recoil. And then we have our barrel system, which is typical Glock. And again, this has the polygonal groove, so you don't want to have a steady diet of lead reloads. But most people don't shoot lead as much as they used to. The fit and finish on the Glock is just excellent. I mean, it's definitely just very well done. They always are. And then, of course, your frame, you know, they perfected this design. There's a lot of different things and upgrades that have been made to the Gen 5 that are much better than even the Gen 4, and again on down to the different generations. But this just gives you just better performance overall. And guys, that's all you need to do to field strips. Very simple. So just return our barrel and then get our recoil spring and guide rod. Put it back over your frame. Test for function, and we're back in business. All right, it comes with your standard Glock box, and we also get the pistol. You get 3 magazines with the handgun. They do make the 10-round versions for states that aren't so free. You get a loader, and then also we get our back straps. You get a tool, and you get an extended pin to fit with these larger back straps. Of course, your lock and your brushes and all that stuff. Now with the MOS model, of course, they have the plates. And so it comes just like this in a shrink wrap, and it gives you the different plates you can set up however you want to. Or again, you can just run it as is. It just gives you a lot of options. Now as far as the MSRP on the Glock Model 20 Gen 5 MOS, there's no retail price listed on the Glock website. I'm seeing them for about $650, somewhere in that range. Of course, you know, your local gun shop's going to have it for whatever price. As far as pros and cons, it carries 10 millimeter. It's 15+1. That's a great mag capacity. It gives you a lot of capability, especially if you're out in the woods, especially for four-legged predators, or for that matter, two-legged. I mean, this gives you a lot of advantages. Of course, with the Gen 5, there have been a lot of upgrades made to this handgun. Thinner grip, even though the grip is thick, it does reduce that grip down, and you have the MOS. And it's Glock reliability, and it's super simple. And if you want to do any kind of upgrades or repairs on this gun, you know, the layman can do it, and that's one of the big advantages of the Glock. You can have a spare parts kit, and you can install all the parts. And you have your night sight options if you want to go away from the plastic sights. I would give the plastic sights a little bit of a ding because, you know, they're just a little bit flimsy. Personally, I have not had any problems, but I know guys that have. Now, as far as disadvantages, it's a large gun. Like we looked at it compared to the 9mm. It's considerably thicker here. It's thicker in the grip. With the Gen 5, though, with the removal of the finger grooves and the slim frame here, I mean, it gives you a lot of advantages ergonomically. For 10mm, it's still going to be thick. Recoil is going to be more than your 9mm, and it's one of those guns that you really just need to take it out to the range and learn to shoot it. Of course, this one has the MOS, and it has the accessory rail, and it has the front cocking serrations, so it's a base for whatever you want to do. If you want to leave it like it is, or if you want to put an optic on it and a light laser, you can do that. There's a ton of aftermarket parts for it, which that is a big plus, and you can get a lot of different holsters because there's a lot of options out there. As far as 10mm goes, though, that is one thing with price and availability that's not going to be matched to your 9mm, which you can get a lot of different rounds. And so when we do have any kind of ammo shortage, these dry up pretty quickly, and so that is a disadvantage in a sense as far as this being carried on an everyday basis. But if you're just going to use it for outdoors, hunting, use it for extreme self-defense, where you would use a .357 Magnum, it's going to give you a lot more capability. And it's going to give you ballistic performance, and you can again go all the way up to those really hot loads for 10mm, and it'll just give you that much more, but it will make the recoil even more excessive. And one thing too is the 10mm can over penetrate, so you want to be careful, especially if you're in an urban environment where there are a lot of people around. 10mm, you're really going to have to think about it even more so than you would even with a 9mm. But overall, for 10mm, it's been very popular. It remains to be more and more popular. There's a number of different handgun choices out there. It's an excellent gun if applied to what you're looking for. Again, as far as any time you would be carrying a revolver for .357 Magnum, you're going to get a lot of the same ballistic capability that you're going to have with your 10 with more round capacity. So guys, if you're looking for a 10mm, I mean, the Glock Model 20 has proven itself, and again, you've got the Glock Model 29. But at this point right now, Gen 5 is only in the Model 20. I love the grip reduction, I love the better trigger, the improved barrel system, the front cocking serrations, and of course, it's MOS, and it's ready for a red dot. But again, this just makes the ideal companion when you're out in the woods, because guys, this will take care of most of the threats, whether four-legged or two-legged. And it does have a lot of power, and again, you've got 15+1 in the magazine, which gives you a lot of advantages. And again, a big thank you to Glock for sending the Model 20 for this review and to be my new companion on the trail. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. Glock introduced the... Now, if you have larger hands, you may to go into my collection because this is thebomb.com. But overall, I mean, these are, well, for crying out loud, I got the wrong freaking gun.
I have one more battery.
Ain't nothing like a dead battery. Kind of hard to get video with a dead battery.
Viable hunting and self-defense caliber in a platform that is just, you know, over the top excellent. In fact, this thing, if it had wings, it would fly. It can hold its breath for hours. I mean, the Glock Model 20 is the bomb.com. It's better than Superman.
Front strap, it just really gives you crap. Stupid gnat flew right in my eye. My God.
Whereas you have 6 plus 1 in a revolver. You got 6+1. I don't know where that one's going. And then it compares though to the .357 Magnum, which is a great caliber, but you know, 6 rounds, and who wants that bull crap? Feel the power.